Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 196. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk and discuss new movies. New movies that come out in theaters or in streaming. We'll talk about them, we'll give you our high level thoughts, and then at the end of the episode, we'll decide, is this movie timeless? Is it something that we can get back to in the future and would want to rewatch various different times? I hope you all are having a great week so far. This is one of the various movies that came out in Memorial Day weekend that we'll be talking about on this episode. 4 total movies came out. Hopefully, we're going to be able to cover and catch up on all of them. One of the movies that headlined Memorial Day weekend, we actually covered on episode 195 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. So go check it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen. Go check out that episode because on episode 195, my brother Omar joins me to talk all about Star Wars, the return of Star Wars in The Mandalorian and Grogu. Go check out that episode and listen to Omar's strong opinions about Grogu and what he honestly thought about that character. You definitely don't want to miss it. So if you have your own thoughts, if you've already seen the movie, well, go to episode 195, drop in a comment, and let me know if you agree or disagree with our thoughts about that movie. Also, want to plug the Timeless Movie Podcast email, which you can always reach out to us anytime. It is timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. Reach out. Let me know any recent movies that you have seen that you would want to recommend to me, and I'd be happy to cover those on the channel as well. Also, if you could do me one last favor, please feel free to review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Let's try to grow this channel even more. That way we can reach a bigger audience. If you have any friends or family that want to listen to somebody ramble for 20 to 30 minutes about their ridiculous opinions about movies, well, hey, this is the perfect channel for them. So go ahead and share this with friends and family. That way we can build this community and just talk all about some of the great movies that have already come out and that are going to be coming out in the near future. All right, that's a lot of housekeeping. Let's jump in to this week's new movie. It is a horror film and it is called Passenger. Now, this movie, I had seen one trailer and one trailer alone, but let me tell you this, that one trailer, man, it was, to me, probably the best trailer that I've seen so far in 2026, horror related as well, because first of all, it wasn't on my radar. I had no clue that they were making this movie. And second of all, I mean, they just gave you a good sense as to what this film could potentially be about. So if you haven't seen the actual trailer for The Passenger, please go check it out. It's only like a minute and a half or 2 minutes long, but I mean, it really does a good job to creep you out. There's a great jump scare, and I rarely get caught with the feeling of tension and being scared in that way from a trailer, and it was able to accomplish that. So really good stuff. But what is the movie really about? What is it good? Is it bad? Well, this is, I think, a great segue for us to move into the non-spoiler section of the Timeless Movie Podcast. That way I can give you a little bit of details of the director, the actor, a synopsis, and my high-level thoughts. All right. Passenger is directed by Andre Ovredal, who has made prior films like Troll Hunter, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and The Last Voyage of the Demeter. In the film Passenger, we have actors Lou Lobel, Jacob Scipio, Melissa Leo, and Joseph Clark. In Passenger, we meet the couple of Maddie and Tyler. Maddie, played by Lou Lobel, and Tyler, played by Jacob Scipio. And they are essentially moving away from Brooklyn. It's not explained very detailed why they're moving away, but they want to just start a fresh new life, and they bought a van, and they essentially want a road trip and live in their van. And so they're trying to, move away. They have all their stuff packed, and you get to see them venture into different cities in the United States. However, one night, as they're traveling, they actually notice an accident happen off the road. They stop, they try to see what happens and try to help. However, after they leave that accident, they start being followed by something that begins to terrorize them. And then Maddie and Tyler end up finding out that this being, this thing that is following them has terrorized travelers for many, many years. And so now Maddie and Tyler have to find a way to escape and get rid of this being that continues to follow them throughout the entire movie. All right, I'm going to keep it very vague. Again, I don't want to spoil anything about this horror film. However, now that I got to check out Passenger, what did I think about the movie? Well, I thought the movie was okay to good. It's between that range. Okay, because there are certain parts of the movie that I wish were a little bit more improved on, like the ending. There are different aspects of the story, some of the writing as well, or tropes that you see for horror. Those are things that I think could have been refined. What are the good parts, though? I think the way that they set up a lot of the different types of tension filled moments, there's a lot of ominous feelings that the movie is able to give. There's some good jump scares as well. And so there's pieces there. It works. There's good ideas. And overall, the concept of a being that tries to terrorize travelers as they go along these different types of roads, it works for the most part. Again, to me, the biggest detriment to this movie is that the ending just doesn't deliver anything special, which is unfortunate. You know what does deliver something special, though, on this podcast? It's pros and cons. The pros and cons always deliver because they allow us to really expand on our thoughts when it comes to these movies that we're watching. So, why don't we go ahead and transition over to the pros and cons for the movie Passenger? All right. First pro that I have for the movie Passenger has got to be this rotating camera that they included in various different scenes. This camera would basically just do a full 360 around a character. Most of the time, it would be the character of Maddie, and essentially, she would be in a specific area in the movie. Let's say she's at a parking lot, and then she hears something, and then the camera slowly rotates 360 degrees, and it does a couple of things. It adds tension because the camera is moving such a slow rate that it starts giving this vibe like, okay, something is about to be behind Maddie or around her. Why is the camera moving slow? You want it to speed up because you're anticipating something being there. And then two, it's able to really allow the movie to work its little movie magic tricks. Like it's able to again incorporate different things. Either it's some type of a scary face or moving their van from one place to another. There's just different things that the actual rotation of the camera allows them to do. And I thought it was really well done, and they didn't overdo it. They were able to maybe, I think, pull it off maybe 3 or 4 times. And I think it always revolved around Maddie. But to me, I really dig it when the camera is able to rotate and give you a full view of everything that is around this character, this universe. It's trying to show you, okay, you don't know what to expect, so keep your eyes locked in because something is about to happen. So that really worked for me, and it was a really good touch to include that kind of a 360 rotation for certain scenes. All right, second and last pro that I have for Passenger is going to be the overall design of the being that is terrorizing Maddie and Tyler. Now, I have to keep this very vague because I don't want to spoil anything, because I do think it's a really cool reveal when you finally get to see the passenger being. But I will try to explain some of the ways that they set up the character. I really like that in the first act, whenever the being was around Maddie or Tyler, they would always be far away. Like I mentioned before, there was a certain accident that happened. They were by the woods, and there is, their van is kind of flashing their hazard lights and it's kind of blinking. And there was a moment where you just see a figure as the lights blink. And then at certain moments, you're just waiting for this being to do something, and you can never see its face. Everything is so dark. There, for some reason, the being just has a very, in a way, elongated body, and so it just looks very freaky. But the entire design of it, keeping the being very much in the dark and not letting you clearly see the face until you really are meant to see it in certain scenes, I thought that was just really well executed. So again, we'll get into it in spoilers, but I thought the overall design of how the being looked was just really well done. Again, just adds to the creepiness of this movie. All right, let's move into some cons. A couple of nitpicks that I have about this movie. Biggest nitpick that I have is the ending. I mentioned it a little bit in my overall thoughts. The ending just does not work because of just these cheesy moments that they include. I'm not opposed to how they wrapped up the story. I'm just opposed to including these cheesy moments, almost as if this was a horror comedy, but the first two acts are not set up to be funny at all. So I just found it very jarring. It just really took me out of the whole experience, and that's what really sucks because when you're in the atmosphere, when you're in this world of the passenger that they're trying to set up, you want to stay locked in the entire time. Instead, I was broken out of that immersion, and it kind of just really left me with that feeling of, oh, okay, well, typical horror trope that just they can't land the plane in regards to this ending. So that really sucked. And then the second con or nitpick that I have about Passenger is the being itself. The powers that this being has aren't really explained in a clear way, or not even explained, because I know that really it's all just supernatural and it's all horror. But how they show it off, it just feels like it's way overpowered at times. It almost makes you feel like there's really nothing that can stop this being. So why doesn't it just kind of take out some of the characters, especially the main characters? Why doesn't it do it a lot quicker? And so there's those kind of questions that come up. And I know it's just a horror movie. Horror movies aren't perfect. They're not meant to really have, or I wish they did have more of the logic behind them. But yeah, in this one, it just raised too many questions. And when a movie raises questions, my mind starts wandering, and then it just completely get taken out of the entire experience. All right, those are all of my non-spoiler thoughts about Passenger. Let's now jump into some spoilers. Let's talk a little bit about the ending, a little bit more about the being and the terrorizing that he's doing. But before we get there, if you don't want to be spoiled, please jump out of the podcast now, watch the movie, then come back and let me know in the comments or send me an email at the timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. That way we can interact and have a really great conversation about this new horror movie. All right, hopefully that gives you guys enough time because spoilers are going to start right now. There is a couple things I just want to quickly highlight. I don't know if there's a lot to really spoil in regards to Passenger, but let's talk about the actual demon, the being. So the being was actually played by Joseph Lopez. I mentioned it in the non-spoiler section, but I really dug that the first act they didn't really want to show you the being at all. You couldn't really see the face of the being. It would be in certain areas that were always dark. You could see the silhouette. And then finally, when you're able to actually see the face of this being, it was freaking creepy. It looked like it didn't have any eyes. It just looked pitch black. The passenger being had long hair. But what was so weird is that it looked like it had like a preacher outfit. It looked like it had the black suit with the little white kind of a ribbon around the neck. And so that kind of threw me for a loop because I was confused as to, well, why is it a preacher? Are they going to explain some of that? And they kind of do. They explain it by basically the entire premise and the concept of the movie is that the passenger being is actually a demon that terrorizes travelers throughout history. They have different symbols, they have different ways to denote where it is safe to travel, where it is not safe. And the being will actually mark something that it plans to take out and kill by scratching it with three claw marks. So think of like Wolverine if you're familiar with that, but the three marks along cars, along different types of places. The majority of it is cars. Essentially, the passenger being will mark a car, it'll terrorize the travelers, and then eventually kill them. And that's essentially what happened to Maddie and Tyler. Their van got marked after they made that stop in the first act. And so throughout the entire movie, they were just trying to find ways to escape. But that is essentially the overall kind of plot of the movie. It's just that Maddie and Tyler unfortunately stopped in the middle of the road at night. Their car got marked, and now they have to try to find a way to not get killed by this passenger demon. Now, the overall design of the demon, again, I called it out before. It works so well. It was so creepy. Again, it had this weird outfit. It also had like a weird body too, because it felt like at times when you were looking at it, you could see the passenger being having longer arms than normal. His arms almost reached to his knees. And so it felt like it was a being that wasn't from here. And it just, again, added to the tension as you would see the being pop up inside Maddie and Tyler's van or around different places near the woods. So the way that they included the passenger being and just the entire costuming and design and makeup, that was all very effective. So props to the makeup and artist team that created this passenger demon. This is definitely something I can envision seeing in Halloween Horror Nights in Florida or in Hollywood, just because the entire monster look of the passenger demon is just very effective. All right. I also kind of talked a little bit about the mythology of what they were trying to do here. Essentially, they have this little prayer that they showed at the beginning of the film that was, I think, from Saint Christopher, who is basically a prayer that explains to protect any of the travelers. And essentially, the passenger being is the opposite side of the Saint Christopher. If Saint Christopher is trying to protect travelers, the passenger demon is there to basically try to kill them and take them off the road. And so that whole mythology, maybe for some people it wouldn't work. For me, I, it worked for me. I think it's maybe to the ties that it felt very religious. It felt like it's always kind of alluding to, hey, look, there is this prayer. If you have this Saint Christopher chain, maybe it'll protect you. At one point, this Saint Christopher chain actually is in the van and it burns the passenger demon. So you know what Maddie and Tyler end up doing? They actually end up buying a bunch of different types of those St. Christopher necklaces just to have it in their van and protect them. So I don't know. To me, the whole mythology, even though I typically don't really like religion and religious movies, I don't know. For me, the way that they were able to tie this, not be over explicit about it, but just very simple. Hey, there's a prayer that protects travelers. And of course, if there is a prayer, there could be a demon on the opposite side that's trying to take you out as you travel these roads. So the way that they set up this kind of a mythology, I really liked. All right, and then how does this movie end? Well, the movie ends with Maddie and Tyler finding out that the only way that they can survive and get away from the passenger demon is to go to a little church that is in the middle of nowhere near Flagstaff, Arizona. And they essentially have to go to this little church because they heard that a truck driver survived by randomly getting to this church. And apparently, whenever it's holy grounds, the passenger demon does not have its normal powers. And so Maddie and Tyler end up making it there. They are able to basically impale, really, Maddie's able to impale the passenger demon because she was driving the van. The demon was on top of the van and eventually uses the statue of St. Christopher, I think, to basically stab the passenger demon. And whenever the passenger demon is on holy ground, it doesn't become a type of supernatural being. It becomes flesh and bones. And so eventually it gets stabbed and then eventually melts and just burns up all the way through. And so Maddie and Tyler both end up surviving. They survived. They were able to get rid of this passenger demon. I was actually surprised. I thought they were actually going to get rid of Tyler. Usually, one of the tropes that you see in horror movies when you have a couple is that one of them is not going to make it. In most cases, it's usually the boyfriend. But actually, Tyler and Maddie both made it out alive at the end of this film. One thing that I do want to call out, again, kind of expanding a little bit more on the nitpick that I had, the ending of it, although, again, it sounds really cool. They were able to vanquish the actual demon. What didn't work for me is Maddie ends up saying this ridiculous line. Like, they introduced the concept that Maddie really likes Bob Ross. They have a Bob Ross bobblehead that is on in their van. And for some reason, Maddie, when she goes and is about to run the car into the demon and stab him and impale him, she ends up deciding that, okay, this is a moment I'm going to say happy accidents, because that's what something that Bob Ross would say. There's no mistakes. There's only happy accidents. And she says that at the end. And so that's where the immersion kind of takes me out of it. I'm like, oh, okay, that dialogue just does not work. I don't really need that in a horror movie. And then another thing that just didn't work was the van had this very ridiculous horn. I'm not going to mimic or try to do the horn sound, but it was supposed to make the audience laugh at the beginning of the movie. And for some reason, Maddie decides that she's going to use the horn while she's trying to run over the actual passenger demon. Again, that wasn't needed. And so those are the kind of aspects where they're trying to make the audience laugh or release some type of tension, but this isn't a horror comedy. This entire movie, the first two acts are all supernatural, all trying to scare you and creep you out, but then they try to make you laugh. And so that just didn't really work with me. There was again, it just felt very jarring, very opposite of what the movie was trying to go for. And so it kind of ruined that experience for me just a little bit. Um, One other thing, the being's powers. I mean, at any moment in time, I think the passenger being had the capability to basically choke out and kill Maddie or Tyler. For some reason, it just played with them the entire movie. And there is a line of dialogue that basically says, "Oh, I'm surprised that you're not dead yet. He must be really enjoying terrorizing you." And if that's meant for us as the audience to understand, like, hey, this being is just going to continue to do that because it's having fun, yeah, okay. But there are times where the being is able to get a character and just rip their head off and kill them in 5 seconds. It's able to make them go to sleep. There's a point where Maddie and Tyler are driving. It's like about to be sunset, and for some reason, the being is able to make them both go to sleep while they're driving. They wake up and then it's dark. No explanation as to how the demon is able to do that, but it was able to make them go to sleep while still driving at night. And so I don't know, it just didn't make sense. So that's the inconsistency that just raises questions. And your movie, if you want it to really deliver, you can't have questions like that. You can't have those things that really make the audience go, well, hold on. If the being is able to just kill somebody very easily, why can't they just get Maddie and Tyler? Like it already seems like it's in their heads, it's controlling them in some way. The demon should already be easily able to get his hands on both of them and just take them out. But neither here nor there. That's just some of the thoughts that I had. Let's move on to the last two segments of the podcast and then we'll wrap things up. First question that I want to ask, which is, should you check this movie out in theaters? Typically, horror movies do really good in theaters. It's a great social experience. Everybody's gasping, everybody's screaming, people are laughing and having fun. Although this movie did provide some of that, I actually would personally recommend you guys just check this one out when it becomes available for streaming. To me, the biggest thing is just the ending. I just didn't really enjoy how they tried to include some of those funny moments. So that really, again, took me out of it and made me feel like, you know what? It's not worth you guys having to go to the theater just to realize and see that this ending just, oh man, it just didn't work. It was conflicting with the rest of the movie. So that's my recommendation. Feel free to wait for this one on streaming when it becomes available. All right, last but not least, final question of the podcast. Is Passenger a timeless movie? In my personal opinion, I'm going to say no. Passenger is not a timeless movie. This doesn't have the real qualities that a classic horror movie would have. If we're talking about films like Hereditary, if we're talking about films that we saw like Weapons, if we're talking even about recently, like films like Hokum or Obsession, there's certain qualities where the film's not only trying to scare you, but it's also trying to tell you a really good narrative. It's trying to show you that there's a deeper feeling, a deeper type of meaning that could relate to what you might be going through or have had somebody that you know gone through that as well. In this film, there's a little bit of a concept of like, hey, maybe just because you move away and start a new life doesn't mean that your entire life will start over. You might still have some of the different types of traumas that you've had in the past. There's things of that nature of like, wanting to stay in one place, but it's never that strong in Passenger. And so again, the film primarily tries to just scare you, tries to just kind of get you to feel the tension and land that jump scare, but there isn't more substance to it, unfortunately. So that is going to be my full thoughts on Passenger. It is not a timeless movie, in my opinion. However, what do you all think? Anybody listening out there, have you seen Passenger? If you have, let me know. Is it your favorite horror movie of 2026? Is it better than Hokum or Obsession or Send Help? If it is, let me know down below in the comments or send me an email at timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. All right, everybody. Appreciate all of you sticking around and listening to my full thoughts about this horror movie called Passenger. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 196 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out our next episode as we cover a new film by Boots Riley, and it is called I Love Boosters. All right, everybody. Appreciate you all listening. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you all later.